What up, y'all? Sorry, I'm just in a bit of a rush right now, but I felt very obliged to talk about this as it has been like something that has been trending to an insane degree. For those of you who don't know, I think I've mentioned this before. True crime has always been something I have I consider it kind of a guilty pleasure now, because I think a lot of times it does more harm than good, and it creates kind of armchair detectives who don't know what the fuck they're doing, and also a lot of it is just like the fiction, or sorry, not fiction, sorry, the non-fiction that you see on like Nat Geo or whatever, like forensic files, stuff like that. Not always accurate representations, but like any TV show that's sort of based in reality, it's like brain candy for me. I enjoy it. I actually almost took criminology instead of psychology, because I've always been like a big fan of Jim Can't Swim, those types of channels, and I just find the pathology fascinating, and the way that like detectives, when they're interrogating a subject looking to elicit a confession, it becomes like this unseen sort of chess game that's being played. But what's trending right now is Dahmer, Monster, a Jeffrey Dahmer story. Obviously, the title, I mean, it is indicative of how this was a show that no one else really wanted to pick up, and Netflix kind of did it the last second, just said, fuck it, here's some money. We pump out just mass amounts of shows that, we cancel after the season anyway, so whatever. And it's brought you by the wonderful, wonderful fucking team who did American Horror Story, which, I don't admit the second season wasn't completely terrible. I didn't much care for the first. It just got repetitive, I found. I was like, okay, he's a ghost, she's a ghost. Okay, now the ghosts are just talking to each other and planning how they're gonna get out of this house. Oh, what the fuck? Okay. But they also did the whole fucking Nurse Ratched show, which was terrible. And funnily enough, this writing duo, Brad, Ian Fulchuk, something like that, they did Glee back in the day. Like, can you believe that? In any case, they, I was actually pleasantly surprised by the show, particularly Evan Peterson's performance, and how towards the end it focuses more on the victims and the families. But the thing is that the show was riddled with so many inaccuracies. Like, I know fucking, like, all there is to know about fucking the famous serial killers, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Dahmer, so forth. And Dahmer is a very interesting one because he actually seemed, anyways, maybe it was just him employing manipulation skills, but it seemed as though he was remorseful towards the end, and that's why he wanted someone to kill him in prison, which they did, and he didn't scream once. So he clearly thought, he deserved punishment, which you don't see in your classical narcissists like, Ted Bundy. He was a completely selfish fuck who just did atrocious things to women, and then chose to represent himself because he was so damn arrogant that despite not having a law degree, he thought he was just as competent as any lawyer that could be appointed to him. He gets the electric chair, and of course he's crying near the end, and not because he was remorseful, and he just felt bad about what he did, because he was scared of dying. Funny that, eh? John Wayne Gacy, on the other hand, said his last words were "kiss my ass." He was a true, to the fucking letter psychopath, diagnosed before he was convicted of all these grotesque murders. But the show, there are a bunch of very small inaccuracies, but like these minute details when it comes to real life cases say a lot. Like the police officers who let Conrack Sympaphone, sorry, I'm not great with pronouncing names that aren't in my particular language because I'm just a unilingual fuck. But anyways, they released him despite him already having a drill, or a fucking hole from a drill in his head. You know, obviously an underage boy walking naked down the street in a daze, and they release him into the custody of Dahmer, who kills him. These people were fired. They were not given a police officer of the year award or whatever, like the show depicted. Yes, they were reinstated eventually, and one of them did become a head of a police officers union, but like they could have conveyed that. But knowing these two, especially after watching 2 episodes of Ratchet when I was really high on acid, because I'm a very big fan of the original One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I just couldn't stand how bad it was and how exploitative it was when it came to mental health, and I realized, oh shit, a lot of American Horror Story, like the whole 2nd season is exploiting mental health. Yeah, so in any case, I mean, I found it admirable that they didn't go to their typical exploitative techniques and just fucking riddle it with gore. But they didn't notify the victims' families or anything before they made it. Like, the Glenda Cleveland character is like his neighbor, which wasn't the case in real life. She lived in a building across from him. I kind of amalgamated these characters, and I mean, I do find like a weird sympathy for Dahmer above other serial killers, because just I think that he was left alone and alienated by his parents to the point, and his peers, to the point of just dangerous isolation. Plus, I believe he did have neurochemical issues. Like, he gave him Prozac in prison, and that's when he like turned to God and wanted to turn over a new leaf, but still, you know, felt bad about what he did. So it was like, you know, fucking, I don't care if they kill me in here. You don't hear that from these serial killers. Like, you know, John Wayne Gacy fucking pleaded innocence until they finally fucking administered the lethal injection. And he even, you know, had one victim who died after he did. Well, how did that happen? Because he traumatized this kid who, as part of a like college project, tricked John Wayne Gacy into believing he was like interested in him. And John Wayne Gacy traumatized him so much that he killed himself, this kid, after John Wayne Gacy was killed via lethal injection, which is probably better than what he deserved. But I want to compare this to a show that tastefully and accurately got things like portrayed, and not just in a way that was like really, really well written, well directed, just well acted, all around a riveting story that does have some fictional spins, but like not to the point of embellishing reality to the point of unreality. There's just a few little twists in the story. Stories that of Larry Hall and Jimmy Keene. The show's called Blackbird. It's by one of my favorite true crime writers, Dennis Lehane. He used to write for The Wire because he was a social worker in Boston, and he saw some of the worst when it came to pedophilia, parental negligence, abuse, that sort of thing. So he kind of knows what he's talking about when it comes to stuff. And boy, oh boy, does this show, speaking of accuracy, have the most brutal prison riot I have ever seen depicted in a show, or movie for that matter. Because, you know, I've heard from correctional officers that, you know, like TV shows, movies, they do not at all come close to depicting the brutality of prison riots. But in this scene, it's like one rolling shot of just carnage. And like, to give you a little taste, there's one scene or part of it where there's an inmate in a wheelchair and he's like fucking smashing this guard on the ground who just got hot grease dumped all over him with his cane. Inmate comes, pushes the wheelchair over, slits the dude's throat. Like, it's like, you know, it's brutal, but it's not just gore for the sake of gore. Yeah, basically the story was Larry Hall was this very fucking weird, creepy dude. I think he had like multiple personalities. He had a lot wrong with him. Killed 14 women. But he was a serial confessor. Like, he would confess to crimes he didn't commit because he wanted the attention. He had issues ever since birth. His twin, when he was in the womb, basically sucked up all the good nutrients, and so his brother got the good looks. He was the football player who went to military. Meanwhile, Larry Hall, fat, ugly, creepy, weirdo. Like, essentially, he confessed to a murder, and they put him in this like notoriously dangerous facility. And Jimmy Keene, who was this very charismatic football player, tight, tall, strapping, good-looking young fella, they're like, well, you know, we'll completely commute your 10-year sentence because he was caught trafficking cocaine. Oddly enough, it wasn't that got him such a lengthy sentence, which he got through a plea bargain too. So, you know, whatever sentence he would have gotten otherwise probably would have been worse. Was for having like 2 gold AK-47s or something like that. And basically, yeah, like he was told that if he managed to elicit a confession from him, being Larry Hall, that he would have his sentence commuted entirely and be a free man. And the only people who knew about his position was his psychiatrist in the facility. Like, they even had him take antidepressants, so there was no question about him being, you know, a mole or a fucking, you know, a snitch or whatever the case may be. He befriends Larry Hall, and like, who's played by the guy who was, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he was in that show, or that movie, the Clint Eastwood movie, really good, no one saw it, called Richard Jewell. He played the security guard, and so he's played these kind of pudgy, charming characters who are outcast, but in this, he's like beyond fucking creepy. And he does this like childlike killer type character very, very well. And they changed some elements because it's fiction, and they don't want to, you know, retell a story that's already being told to the letter. But they do so in a way that is relatively tasteful, and it focuses on the 2 characters. It's really a case study of Larry Hall and Jimmy Keene, and how they kind of came to be, both of them, on a pathological level. Because Jimmy Keene seems like he had a little bit of narcissism going on. But in any case, I won't spoil it for you, but it's done so much better than Dahmer, and it's like, you know, they don't talk about the victims' names and stuff like that. They have one episode where it's a victim who is sort of reflecting on the short life that she led before being killed by Larry Hall. And Larry Hall had a pretty fucked up life. Like, he grew up in a graveyard, and his parents, or his dad anyways, who was an alcoholic, would force him to dig up graves at night and like take the fucking nice stuff from the grave, like the person who was buried, like rings or whatever. So Larry Hall, like there's a scene after the riot where all the inmates are cleaning it up. Jimmy Keane, Larry Hall are cleaning everything up, and they have like the funniest but creepiest conversation. Like Larry Hall's like, hey, if you had a pet chicken, would you eat it? And he's like, who the fuck has a pet chicken? Jimmy Keane's response, and he's like, I don't know, but I mean, I would eat mine. He's like, you would eat your pet? And he's like, yeah, it's just meat, right? And he's like, but it's your pet. You're not supposed to eat your pet. And he was like, it's still meat all the same. He's like, I had a dog once. He's like, you ate your dog? And he was like, So just to show you how fucking crazy Larry Hall was. But, I'm not going to spoil the ending. Whatever equivalent there are to the Oscars when it comes to TV shows. You know, Golden Globes, Emmys, whatever the fuck they are. I don't watch that shit. I believe this show like really deserved to win some awards for the acting, the writing, the directing. Dennis Lehane, I love him. I did a video where I analyzed what's it called, Mystic River, which is one of his stories. He didn't direct the movie, but he wrote the book that's based on, and I believe he may have written the script too. But he also did Gone Baby Gone, I think third, fourth season of The Wire. He was one of the writers. I was even nervous though, like trusting him as a good crime writer. I was nervous that he was going to like really fuck up the story and make it into just some sort of exploitative like insensitive bloodbath. And that's a problem with a lot of true crime or fiction that's based on true crime. Like another one I watched was The Staircase, which I remember seeing the documentary when it first came out. Not when it first came out, but a long time ago. And I mean, the performance by Colin Firth is amazing. He nailed Michael Peterson's his demeanor and his quirks to the T, like saying fuck a lot, kind of going like this, smoking a tobacco pipe. But you see Tony Collette get murdered like 4 or 5 times, or killed 4 or 5 times in it, based on the different theories in that case. But like, I feel like it didn't add anything new to the documentary, what you experience in the documentary. But the documentary itself was also a little bit one-sided, I found. Because typically true crime is trying to tell you to believe one outcome or another, while duping you into believing that you're analyzing what's going on, you're profiling or whatever, you're, playing armchair psychologist sort of thing. And watching Criminal Minds, it's not fucking playing the hunter-killer or whatever. Hey, sponsorship, you want to sponsor me? Fucking, there's one. That way I'll be able to actually afford that fucking game. My god, it's like ridiculously expensive. But, like Blackbird was absolutely incredible for a miniseries. Had Ray Liotta as his last role, his last performance. He did a terrific job. Every actor in that did a terrific job. And it's very high stakes. Because the thing is, Jimmy Keane, if he fucked up, he got into a fight in the prison and caught extra charges, they were gonna dump him there with those charges on top of his sentence for the rest of his life. And this was a very dangerous, facility for the criminally insane. Much more dangerous than the general population facility he was in before. But yeah, Dahmer otherwise it's become insanely popular, but like it's like, it's so heavily fictionalized, and like just the fact that they didn't notify family members before making this, family members of the victims who were portrayed by actors and stuff like that on screen. Like, it is just, I think that is just, like, you know, the height of exploitation right there. I gotta say, I did enjoy it better than other Dahmer adaptations, but yeah, and as I said, I do find him interesting as a character, a real life individual in terms of his pathology. But this brings me to a very important point. I don't have time to expound on it too much, so I'll make a part 2 video for this, but I believe both Larry Hall, Jeffrey Dahmer, a lot of these people, if they received early intervention for their sexual impulses, probably none of that would have happened. None of their murder sprees would have happened if they were properly treated. Like Dahmer, you see, and this is accurately depicted in the show, you know, he's taking Prozac at the end when he's in prison, and he turns a new leaf around. Like, as far as I know, though, he didn't brag in prison about fucking having fans and, you know, his victims, you know, looking like the prison food once he's done with it. Like, no, I think he was very much remorseful for what he was suppressing from the public and himself for a long time. And, yeah, that's why he wanted to die. That's why he wanted, you know, since there's no death penalty, you know, they gave him the maximum sentence of 999 years or whatever. And, you know, that's why he didn't scream when he got fucking his head smashed into the wall a bunch of times before being bludgeoned with a barbell. Also the Larry Hall case is much more interesting because he's a much harder guy to make heads or tails of. He's so strange and awkward, and his personalities sort of flim-flam back and forth, and it's just like, well, how did this happen? But I mean, I'm sure if he did get like actual treatment as a young man, then he wouldn't have been fucking killing women while basically having out-of-body experiences and not totally in control of what he was doing, or so he claims anyways. But yeah, I think those are two good examples of how to adapt true crime accurately and tastefully versus the opposite of that. I admittedly have a bias against the two guys who wrote the show. As I said, I think American Horror Story is just fucking silly. I mean, I laughed my ass off through the 6th season, which is one of those so bad it's good kind of things. I do like Evan Peterson as an actor. I do think, again, that it was one of the like better Dahmer adaptations, but it's like, A, do we really need this? B, if you're gonna do it, just fucking maybe send a percentage of what you earn to the families. Maybe interact with the families while you're making it instead of just telling their stories for them, right? Blackbird did a very good job of omitting the victims and the families, you know, implying what happened, but not telling you about their lives, because it's not a fucking Hollywood writer. Well, I mean, Dennis Lehane, again, he had real world experience, and wasn't always a Hollywood writer, but it's not their job to fucking take it upon themselves to do what they believe is justice, or whatever the case may be to them, or whatever they may lead themselves to believe. Yeah, and I also highly recommend Blackbird. I'm really withholding a lot of details about the show and its narrative because it's only 6 episodes or something like that, and I really don't want to spoil it because it was just that good. It's on Apple TV. I mean, feel free to pirate it, stream it, do whatever you want to do. Not advocating that you do, but if that's what you need to do, fucking, I won't judge you. I do it all the time. Guilty as fucking charged. Anyways, I gotta go. Bye.